The crystal chandelier sparkled above the grand dining hall, casting golden light on the long mahogany table that looked like it belonged in a palace. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos laughed over fine wine and gourmet dishes, oblivious to the quiet figure moving silently between them. She was barely noticed, except when she was in someone's way. Her black and white uniform was crisp, though a little frayed at the edges, and her hair was neatly tied back despite the exhaustion evident in her tired eyes. Elena had been working since dawn, scrubbing, polishing, and carrying trays heavier than she should have been lifting. Every step she took was careful, her shoulders slightly hunched, not because of the weight of the silver platters she carried, but because of the weight of life itself. She didn't want to be noticed. But sometimes life has other plans. Before we go deeper into this story, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and share this story with someone who might need a reminder that no one's story is over until grace has had its say. The evening had been going smoothly until a single slip changed everything. Elena was balancing a tray of pasta bowls, weaving her way through the crowded table, when a guest's chair shifted unexpectedly. She stumbled, not enough to fall, but enough for a few strands of pasta to slip over the edge of a plate. The sauce landed on the cuff of the host's immaculate suit jacket. A hush swept through the room as every pair of eyes turned toward the head of the table. There stood Richard Harrington, the Millionaire host, his expression freezing in shock before hardening into a glare that could cut through stone. He was a man used to control, of his business, his reputation, and especially the people who worked for him. His voice sliced through the silence, sharp and loud enough to make Elena flinch. "Shut up and work," he barked, his words echoing in the grand hall. The humiliation seared into her like a brand. Her face flushed crimson, but she quickly bowed her head and whispered an apology, her voice trembling. Around her, the room filled with murmurs, a few gasps, and more than one pair of judgmental eyes. To the guests, she was just a maid who had made a mistake. But for Elena, this wasn't just a mistake. It was another crack in a life that already felt like it was breaking. She returned to her duties in silence, every movement now stiff and mechanical. She thought of her daughter Sophia, waiting at home with her grandmother. She thought of the medication bills piling up for her mother's heart condition, of the late rent notice she had hidden in her apron pocket that morning. She couldn't afford to lose this job. And yet, standing there with sauce stains on her gloves and humiliation burning her eyes, she wondered how much more she could endure. But fate, as it often does, was not finished writing the night's story. Only minutes later, the sound of breaking glass shattered the hum of the party. Richard, who had risen from his chair to pour wine for a guest, suddenly stumbled. His hand clutched his chest, and the confident mask he always wore slipped away in an instant. His face turned pale, his breaths came in ragged gasps, and the room erupted into chaos. Guests shouted for help, but no one seemed to know what to do. Elena froze for a split second, then instinct took over. Her father had suffered from the same heart condition before he passed away, and she had learned CPR at a community workshop years ago. Dropping the tray she held, she rushed to Richard's side. Kneeling beside him, she tilted his head back, checked his breathing, and began chest compressions with practiced precision. Her hands moved with urgency, her focus unshaken despite the frantic voices and panicked footsteps around her. The room that had moments ago been filled with laughter and chatter was now silent except for the sound of Elena's voice counting compressions, urging him to breathe, to hold on. Seconds felt like hours, but then Richard coughed, his chest heaving as air rushed back into his lungs. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then locking on the face above him, the same face he had humiliated moments earlier. Tears welled in his eyes, though whether from pain or shame, no one could tell. Elena stepped back as paramedics arrived, her uniform rumpled and streaked with sweat, her breathing heavy. Richard was lifted onto a stretcher, but before they wheeled him away, he reached for her hand. His voice was weak but filled with a sincerity no one in the room had ever heard from him. He whispered, barely audible, "Forgive me, please." Over the next few days, Richard's life changed in ways no business deal had ever managed to. He learned that the woman he had berated was not just a maid but a mother fighting every day to keep her family afloat. He sent flowers, then letters, and finally came in person, humbly standing outside her modest apartment with no entourage, no expensive suit, just gratitude. He offered to pay for her mother's treatment, to cover her daughter's school fees, and to ensure she never had to struggle alone again. But more than money, he offered something rarer: respect, acknowledgement, and a genuine apology. Elena accepted his apology, not because she needed his help, but because she understood that forgiveness was as much for her own peace as it was for him. Her dignity had never been defined by his words that night, nor was it restored by his remorse. It had always been there, carried quietly in the way she loved her family, in the sacrifices she made, and in the strength she found in moments of despair. And so, the millionaire who once thought wealth was his greatest asset learned that the richest people are often those with the most compassion. And the maid who had been told to shut up and work walked away not just with security for her family, but with her head held high, knowing she had turned humiliation into hope. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner for more stories that remind us the world still has kindness left. The grand banquet hall glowed with golden light from towering crystal chandeliers, the air filled with laughter, the clink of glasses, and the faint aroma of gourmet dishes. At the center of it all sat Richard Harrington, a millionaire whose sharp words were as well known as his wealth. Beside him, the guests enjoyed the night, unaware that a quiet figure moved silently around them, carrying the weight of an entire world on her shoulders. Elena, the maid, kept her head low. Her black and white uniform was crisp, her steps measured, but her thoughts were far away, on her daughter waiting at home, on her mother's medical bills tucked into her apron pocket, and on the rent notice she didn't want to think about. All she needed was to make it through the night. But a single misstep changed everything. A guest shifted their chair unexpectedly, causing Elena to stumble. A streak of pasta sauce landed on Richard's pristine tuxedo sleeve. The hall went silent. Richard's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Shut up and work," he barked, his words sharp enough to sting even the onlookers. Elena swallowed her humiliation, blinking away the heat in her eyes, and kept working. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Minutes later, a sudden sound broke the room's rhythm. Glass shattered. Richard stumbled, his hand clutching his chest as his face turned pale. Chaos rippled through the banquet, guests frozen in shock. Elena's instincts took over. She rushed forward, her hands steady as she began CPR. Each compression was a silent plea, for him to breathe, for the night to end differently. And then, Richard gasped. His eyes fluttered open to see the same woman he had humiliated kneeling over him, saving his life. In the days that followed, Richard's pride began to crack. He learned about Elena's struggles, her quiet resilience, and her unwavering dedication to her family. One evening, he appeared at her modest apartment, no tuxedo, no entourage, just a man holding flowers, an envelope, and an apology heavy with sincerity. Elena accepted his words not because she needed his help, but because forgiveness was a gift she chose to give. She walked away with her dignity intact, while Richard walked away with a heart changed forever. That night, as the cool evening air wrapped around them, it became clear that true wealth is not found in gold or glass towers, but in humility, compassion, and the courage to make things right.